Assalamu alaikum. This is the second part of the series called Flutter Payment App. In the first part, we basically covered the UI for this, and in this section, we'll cover how to read information from JSON files, how to build JSON files, and populate the data from JSON file in your UI, and then we'll learn how to read data from network using API, and we'll read the data both using Getx and API and populate them, and at the end we'll see how to build a backend using Laravel, and I will show you the complete detail how to build the backend, and then we'll do the payment using PayPal. Okay, so without further ado, let's get started. So now, after done with this static part, we want to load data from JSON file. Okay, to do that, we need to come over here and in our project folder over here. So we'll create a new folder and we'll call it JSON. Okay, and now we'll create another file inside it. We'll call it data.json and we should be good to go. All right. Now over here, we'll build our JSON file, and a lot of you ask me where is the JSON file or how to build it. So here, that's how you build a JSON file. Okay, so you will have square braces, and then within it you will have this second brackets or the curly brackets, and within it you will have information in key and pair value. Anyway, so our first key is brand, and we'll call the brand name, say Ken Gen Power, like that. Okay, and well, there should be a date here somewhere, like for example say this. So we do the date over here, and we'll read them as a string over here, say random date, doesn't matter, and then we'll have status. So this status is whether the bill has been paid or not, or it's been selected for our payment, like this. So once you click on these buttons, so the status would change. So that's where it comes, and it's a boolean value for now, and then the actual bill. Okay, so we'll call it due, and it could be any number, $sign. Okay, but we'll put the $sign later from the code, but not in the JSON file itself. And we can also put additional information. Okay, so more. All right. Okay, it could be long text, pay before, say things like that. All right, so certain date. Anyway, so this is the JSON file. So after having this key pair values, we'll read them one by one in our application. Okay, now there's just one object, so we want to create several objects. So what we'll do, we'll copy paste them. So just go ahead and do that. And over here you can just change the name. It's a tech power instead of say like that, and change some basic info. Okay, so you must pay now, like that. And here it's a Airtel, whatever it is, and say 3, 8, it's a 10, it's a due in 3 days. All right, so we have this pair value over here. So it's a JSON file, so that's how you create a JSON file and the key pair values. Anyway, so now the JSON file is there. So in our pop specs file, we need to mention our JSON path. In our pop spec file over here, we need to mention our JSON path. So the JSON folder is over here under the main directory. So you just write here JSON, and you should be good to go. All right. Okay. So now, well, it asks you to do some update. Just go ahead and do it. It doesn't matter though. Okay. Now we are done with the JSON file, but now we need to read that. Okay. So what we could do, basically, we can put all this information over here in my homepage file or payment page, but that's not very good, because as your app grows larger, it would get more difficult to maintain them. So what we will do, we'll create a new folder to load this JSON info. So we'll write a different file, Dart file, to load them from a different folder. Okay, so here we'll create a folder, and folder name is, say, we'll call it services. Okay, all right, and within it we'll create a new Dart file, and we'll call data services.dart. Okay, now within this file we'll load our JSON info. Okay, yeah, all right. Now over here, to load the JSON info, we'll declare, definitely we have to declare a class. Well, in Dart pretty much everything has to do with a class though, so we'll go ahead and create here a class. So we'll call the class name data services. You can call it anything you want, but I'll call it data services. All right, now over here we'll actually load the JSON file, and to load the JSON file we'll first declare a method. We'll call it, say for example, get users. All right, over here. Okay, now here to load the JSON file we need to use a special class or Dart file. So we need to import it first over here at the top. So I think it's called package. Let's see whether it's here or not. Services, yeah, this one. And we'll show it as root bundle. So when you write like this, you can access the properties of this file, Dart file, using root bundle. Okay, now it has one of the properties that's called load string. Okay, root bundle dot load string. So this is the property or method. So it has many methods or properties. You can go ahead and see. So this is the one we want to use. Okay, now over here we need to mention the path of the JSON file. So our JSON file within JSON folder, and the JSON document name is data.json, or the file name. Okay, so this is the folder name and this is the file name. Okay, so we load it. Okay, once we load it, we may save the information in a variable called var info. All right, okay, now once you do that, you need to decode it. Okay, so to decode it, you do json.decode, and over here we'll just throw the info, this variable. Okay, and I think it's asking us to import a library. Okay, we did that. All right, now over here, now as you see, the type argument future string cannot be accessed from a string, so it takes a future string. That means that when this operation, when it decodes this information from this file, when it's loaded, it needs to wait. So that's why when waiting happens in Dart, we call them future. Okay, when you need to wait something, or a function that needs to wait to do few things or certain things, then it has a certain property. That property is called future. So now the functions or the parameters, they take future. You need to use a special keyword that's called await. Okay, that's what you need to do. Now once you use await, the caller function, which is this one, you need to use async. All right, so they work together. Once you have await in your function, the caller function is this one, or it could be anything in your case. That function should have the keyword async. All right, okay, so that's how the data is loaded. Okay, now after loading the data, we can put in another variable and we'll call it list. Okay, all right, and after that, okay, so data would be loaded, and once the loading is done, we'll save over here and send it to somewhere else in our application. So that means that this one has to return something, because this function would be called from somewhere else. So we need to return data, right? So, well, you might think, so let's do return list, okay, like that. Now, actually, if you go ahead, there is no error though, but in future, when you try to load this information, it'll throw you errors, okay? And anyway, we'll fix that soon. So now we'll find a way to call this thing, okay? Now, in general, this is in programming, something is called MVC pattern. module, what is that, MVC for module, V for view, C for controller. Okay, so we want to follow that pattern. Now this data, once it is loaded, we want to process the data to our we want to process the data so that we can use the data in our view. So that's why we need to have a new file over here, and we'll call it controllers. Okay, and over here we'll create another Dart file. We would call it data controllers .dart. So this file, what it do, it will call this function over here. So we'll create a class over here, and this class would call this function and save the data within this class, and our view will get this, our view over here, like this one, and they will get the data from this file over here, whatever the file does. Okay, yeah. Now over here, to process the data and to save the data in our controller, we'll use Getx once again. Okay, so we'll create a class, we'll call it say data controller, and we'll extend Getx controller like that. Okay, make sure the file has been imported, and if you get notification, just go ahead and import that. So this is our file. Now over here we want to load, we want to get the data from here and save it within it. Okay, well, to save that we need to declare a variable. Okay, so we'll declare a variable, we'll call it list, and empty list. So that's it. Okay, now in Flutter Getx, if you want to load a list, empty list, you should have this one. Okay, that means empty list. But now we want this list to be responsive. What is responsive? So once you have changes in the list, that means the item, we change things within after loading the data, and we change the status, things like that, or we want to change certain information. So the list should be observe this thing. So OBS means observable. So this list is observable. That means something happens in the list, something changes, this variable should know it. Okay, so once you tag this with OBS, this list become observable. It more like alive, so it knows if there are changes within it. Okay, so that's why in Getx we use the special word or keyword OBS. It makes it like observable. So things happen, things changes, this list would know it. Anyway, so we'll load it over here. All right. Well, let me close this section. Now, to load the data, we need to use override a function. So I'll override. Okay. Now there is a function like init method in Flutter. Getx also has a function that's called onInit. So we'll call that one. And over here we need to use override another function, super.onInit. So once you write this one, you need to override the function onInit within Getx. So this is coming from this function, and this one both coming from Getx package. All right. Now this is onInit. You, from the name you understand that. From the name you understand that it should do initialization. So what we will do data initialization. So we'll call a function over here. We'll call load data. Okay. Now of course this function doesn't have a body, so we'll go ahead and define body for it. Okay. Okay. Now the error should be gone. Okay, now do see that earlier we created this function, so we need to call it, right? So to call this function, we need to instantiate this class over here. Okay, that's what we'll do. So we'll create a variable, we'll call it final, and the variable name is service. And now here we'll instantiate and we'll call the class, the constructor data service. Okay, you should be good to go, and it should be there automatic. Updated or imported. Okay, anyway, so we created an instance of this class. Now the instance is this one. In this one we can access the methods from there. So we want to access get users. Okay, so let's go ahead. Now over here we can call service dot get users. Okay, all right, and you want to save the information in a variable. We'll call it var info. Okay, and then because this is a list, okay, so now you'll see from here it does return, well, after decoding we think that it returns a list. Okay, all right, so we'll over here we'll save it in our list over here. So remember, we think that this returns a list. We'll see whether it returns a list or not. We assume that it returns a list, so we'll save this information in our list variable. Okay, all right, so what we'll do, we'll call list dot add all, and here this info variable will pass to it. Okay, now here's the thing, so let's go ahead and try to run our app. Let's see we have an error or not. So let's run it one more time and check. Okay, of course there are no errors because we are not calling this method over here. Like for example, we are not going to, sorry, not the method, we are not using this variable, okay, anywhere in our app. So we just created, but it's not getting called from anywhere. Do remember, now list should have this information. Okay, whatever information it reads from the database, sorry, our JSON file over here, list should contain it. Now we declared list as a kind of public variable, so we should be able to access it if we create an instance using data controller. Okay, so over here come to our my homepage file and let's see, find a suitable place to call it. So let's minimize all this function. Okay, I think this is the perfect place. Over here we instantiate a variable of this controller type. Okay, yeah, so let's go ahead, sorry, my home page over here, so we'll call it, say, final data controller and get.put, and over here our dependency is this controller, so we'll call it over here data controller. Okay, now it's being cranky. I think we need to import the library. Okay, the error should be gone. So in Flutter Getx, if you want to import a controller, is the dependency. Dependency means that this app depends on this one. That's why it's called dependency. It's a high level word. All it means that just call it. That's just like any other class, you call it. So anyway, so you need to call the controller using this special method which is called get.put. Okay, so this is only for Flutter Getx, not for other file or packages. Anyway, so now this should contain, using this one, we'd be able to access some of the properties that controller has. Okay, now controller has what? Controller has this list. Now this list has what? This list has the values loaded from here. So you see, so that's how we access our JSON file from this file. Okay, so now over here within it we'll call, we'll try to print it. Okay, so print controller dot list. Okay, and now let's see whether we would be able to call or not. So what's happening here, let me tell you. So we instantiated an object from data controller. So this is the controller. So this controller would call this list. Okay, now this list is over here. Okay, and in return list would get information from this get service and put it in the list, and get service is over here. Okay, now get service loads the data, okay, and put it here and we return it. So that's how the whole logic works. It's not difficult, it just few steps. Okay, it's not difficult at all for new or beginners. A lot of people might think, oh, it's so difficult. No, it's just calling, A is calling B, B is calling C, C is calling D, that's all. Okay, Anyway, now let's go ahead and run it and see if we have error or not. Okay, yes, now as you see over here, we have this error. Okay, so what is this error? This error is saying future dynamic is not subtype of iterable dynamic. Now this error is coming due to the problem over here. Well, it's not a problem though. It's not a problem over here. So it says that future dynamic is not a subtype. So over here, actually, so this should wait when it loads information, but we are not mentioning the return type. Okay, we are saying over here, look, when this gets loaded and then you decode it, we should wait. Okay, so what it does here, so while we are not returning the type as wait, we are just saying wait, but we need to return the data type as wait as well. Okay, in Dart, if once you need to wait and once you need to return, because actually you see we are returning here, but we are not saying any data type. So here we need to mention our data type. Okay, because we are returning something, and data type itself should be waiting type. So what is this waiting type? In general, a lot of time you write, say int, that's the return type, string, that's a return type, or an object. Okay, so what the hell is this waiting return type? In Dart, you do future. You do future to return something when you want to return and wait. Okay, so in that case, you do this keyword return when you want to return and wait at the same time. So the keyword is return. Okay, now over here it says that it should be dynamic type. Okay, so now here we do list. Actually, we want to return a list from here. Okay, and the list should be dynamic. So this dynamic means that the data type it contains, it's dynamic. What does that mean? That means that this key and pair value, they're dynamic. So key is all strings, the pair, it could be string or integer or boolean. Okay, so that's the dynamic part. Anyway, regarding this JSON file reading and list, I have a tutorial. Check out the link below of this video. So hopefully if you learn that tutorial, this would be much easier to understand what's going on here. Anyway, so let's come back to our file over here. So here now we are returning something, and that's the future type. Anyway, so what we could do over here, before we return, we could print the information. Let's see in the console that what it returns. So let's go ahead and run it. Okay, now we have another error. Okay, so what is saying that let's see, the argument type cannot be accessed from the parameter iterable. So what we need to do here, you just get the information, you say you get the information and put it right over here. But as we saw earlier, that this information, when it loads JSON data, it needs to wait, right? So here you need to use the keyword which is called await. Okay, and then error should be gone. But now once you use await, you also need to use async. All right, now you should be good to go. Let's go ahead and run it. Yes, as we see, it does return a list. Okay, because we just printed the data over here. Okay, we just printed the data over here, over in this line, and we see, yes, it does return a list, as you can see. Now here's one thing, what is list? Once again, for list and map, this conception, to understand, check out the link below. You must see that link, watch that tutorial to understand. Anyway, from that tutorial we learned that list is what is a list? Anything you see using between this square brackets, that's a list. Now list can contain maps, so anything using curly braces, that's called map. So our list is containing map over here. All right, anyway, we have a list over here that's we are returning, but the variable over here, which one we declared and returning, it is not a list. So well, this should work, but most of the time you should explicitly tell what is this variable, what type, because until it's decoded, and put the data into it, we don't know what type it is. We just say var what type. So what you could do, you can explicitly mention that this is a list. Okay, how to do that? Just call here list. Okay, now over here, now we can call like this. This is a list. Okay, or even better, if you say, well, this is a list, and this is a dynamic list. Okay, even if you don't write that, it will work just like we had this early. It should work most of the time, but sometimes it doesn't work. So that's where over here we explicitly mention we are returning a list, and this list is dynamic. Okay, so the type matches over here. Whatever you promise to return over here, that's what you're promising by saying here, yes, I'm returning a dynamic list. Okay, so that makes more sense to our application. Otherwise, application would just go ahead and guess. Hey, like for example, with this application would guess, yeah, I don't know the list. Maybe it's a dynamic list. Maybe it's not. Just do some guesses and hunches, and which could be wrong or buggy for your application. Anyway, hopefully it makes sense that why we are doing it like this, and this is a more professional way to do these things. And one more thing that we do a lot of time, okay, we want to return actually like this, list.map, and then we want to say return e for element, and then you do toList. Okay, now to understand this section, please check out the link below, as I said early. Anyway, even if you don't write like that, you just return list, that should work, but that's not the best way to do programming. I mean, when you work with list and map, okay, you should want to return a map. Okay, what it does, it goes inside this list and takes each of them and make sure that it becomes a list. Until you do this, actually this is not good enough to be a list. Okay, so with this we are becoming a perfect list. The list should contain things like information like this. Okay, so once again, if you don't do any of this, it still works, but that's not the best way to do programming. Okay, so whenever you have this map function, okay, you should return it as a list. Okay, so that's what I said. Anyway, so now we are done with this service section. Okay, now we can go ahead and show this information in our application over here in the app. Okay, so that means that we are able to access this list from our home page. And now this is the time where we really put the data in our application. Okay, now of course we need to change these names because we already load the information from JSON file. Do remember that all this information is within over here, right? Okay, so let's find a place where we can change this information. Now this is the place. So now this is the brand's name. So this is where we want to change our file name, brand name dynamically. So earlier we have the access to our list from this controller variable. So we can call controller list, and we can use the index to access them. And now over here, what we could do, we could do brand. Okay, now where is this coming from? Once again, do remember list, this variable just loaded the JSON file. It has the JSON info. Now we can access the JSON key from this list. So JSON key is this one. So if we go ahead and check our JSON file, so these are the keys. So we can access the keys using these names anyway. So now over here, let's go ahead and run it. And it did work. As you see that here we have this name that changed dynamically. Do remember that they are coming from JSON file, Kengen Power, Tech Power, and Airtel Power. Anyway, but now it threw an error over here. So it's about invalid range. Okay, so we can solve this easily. Now here, do remember we have this list builder over here. Okay, so what you could do, we can count the number of items from our controller list variable, controller list dot length. Okay, well, if you wonder where is the index coming from, as you saw earlier, so this is the index we talked about. Okay, now it would read whatever the number of list in our JSON file and put it over here. Okay, now let's go ahead and run it. Yeah, and by this time the error has gone, as you can see, and our JSON file is working perfectly. Okay, well, now here's the other thing now. So we can change this information as well, right? So now they're very static, so we can change them. So go ahead and find our this places. So we can also change this one over here, which says this one. Okay, so we do controller dot list index, and here I think this is called more. Okay, let's go ahead and run it. Yes, it changed. All right, yeah. Okay, now we'll see there's a weird problem. So they are not aligning. Okay, that's because in the first tutorial of this series I skipped out something, which is for our column property, I guess this one. Okay, so for column property, I guess let's see. So this was a column, so this is the column, I guess, and over here we could do cross-axis alignment dot start. It should solve the problem. Yes, it did. Anyway, and in the first tutorial we saw that this length changes dynamically, and that's what it does over here right now, as you see. Anyway, so now we want to change this values. Okay, so where we can change, so let's search for it. 1248, Control F, 1248. So this is the place. So over here we want to change it. Okay, now we'll keep the dollar part and do this plus. Okay, so you would put two strings together. So you do controller dot list, and then we do index, and then we do over here do. Okay, now let's go ahead and save it. As you see, it changes automatically. So these are the values that we put in our JSON file. Okay, so now we are successfully able to load every information from our JSON file, and that's just so cool, right? Okay, well, now here's one thing. In a real life, you may want to load data actually from network, and that's what we'll do very soon. And once you load data from network, the process could delay, okay, because you don't really get the data immediately. So the server can give you back the data in a delay, like 5 seconds delay or 10 seconds delay, or with good servers you get the response pretty much immediately, but most of the time you have a delay. So what we could do here, we can simulate this issue, because we need to know what is delay, and as well as how to overcome this delay problem. Okay, otherwise you will have an empty screen. Okay, all right, so right over here now we are returning the list. Okay, so we can returning the list within a function. That function is called future.delayed. Okay, now it takes two parameters. The first parameter is the delay, so we can simulate it as a delay. So we do duration. Now it takes another parameter, seconds, so we delay 5 seconds, and 5 seconds later, anyway, so as I said that it takes delayed function, takes two parameters. So the first one is how long you want to delay, all right, and then what do you want to load, that's it. Okay, and return, things like that. So what we could do, we could move this information over here within it, and the return statement we can move it here. Okay, so that's how it should work. Now, well, over here we have an error. Let's see, because I guess you want to return a function over here, return it as a single function like this. Okay, it's called an arrow function actually. So you return things within one line. Okay, Anyway, so now it would delay 5 seconds and load the, it would load from JSON file, delay 5 seconds and return it to our application. Now let's go ahead and see. We started, you see it's empty now. We are waiting for 5 seconds to be done. Okay, now 5 seconds is gone, but it didn't show up immediately, right? Well, now that part has to do with Getx, because once the 5 second is done, or it's gone, we need to tell the application, hey, the data has been returned, now you should go ahead and show it. But our application doesn't know that the data has returned. It just delay 5 minutes, okay? Even though it returns the data, but application has no idea that data has returned. So we need to work on that. Once again, let's go ahead and see what's happening here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Well, 5 seconds has been done. You should be able to see the data, right? Because application doesn't know what to do now. But if you refresh, you see the that data is there, right? With the updated data. Anyway, now we'll see how to overcome this problem. To notify our app that the data has been loaded, we need to come over to our data controllers class, and over here we'll declare a variable, and we'll call it var. Say we'll call it loading. We'll call it as a private variable, and we'll set it to false, and we'll set it to OBS. Once again, OBS is an observable variable. It means which observes things. Anyway, so we want this data has been loaded. Okay, definitely we'll know it, but we want to trigger something. Okay, and based on that, app will load the data and show it. App will show the data. Anyway, so over here I'll just cut this one, and now I'll use a try catch clause. Okay, and over here I'll do catch an error if we have, and then we'll do finally. So now over here we'll try to load the data. This is the data. Before we load the data, we set the value of this variable to false. Remember, when you declare a variable like this, not a list, a variable like this, so you have to explicitly set the value. It's more like an object over here, this one, but here we will access the value. And how to do that? So you could do loading.value. Do remember, every observable variable has a value property, so you can access that, and we'll set it to false. Okay, and if we have error over here, we'll print encountered error, and we'll print the error as well, whatever error is that. Okay, if no error, we'll fall back to this one, and now that means once it returns from this block of code, that means it's successfully loaded. So over here we'll set it to true. Okay, perfect. So this is the block that would help us to change the value of this variable, loading value. And now somehow we need to notify our home page component over here, let it know. So we need to be able to access this value from here. Okay, now as we are in Getx ecosystem, you have to set up other properties over here first. Okay, now in Flutter there's a special keyword, it's called get, and this keyword is used for getting a property. Say you want to get this property or access this property, just this property and its value from other files. So you need to use the keyword called get, and then you can declare a variable first. So we'll call the variable loading. This is a private variable. This would be more like a public because it has this underscore, means private in Flutter. And then you will return. Remember, you're not doing this braces over here, just return like this, because get just returns property, only one property or field most of the time. Now here you do return loading dot value. So whatever value this loading, this private variable has, we are returning, and we can access it from this variable wherever we can call it. Okay, now most of the time this could be rewritten as like this, loading, okay, and then we do loading dot value. Well, this is called arrow function. Okay, of course they're same, that's why it's being cranky, but we'll remove this. So this is called arrow function, just because there is an arrow, it is there the same thing. Instead of writing return, you write the arrow and it removes the braces. Okay, if your function is one line and it returns, then you can use arrow function. Actually we have used this arrow function over here. Okay, this is an arrow function as well as, okay, over here this function doesn't take anything, empty parameters, so that's why it's empty. Anyway, now come here, let's remove this, the arrow would be gone. Now with this we'd be able to access this value and know that when it becomes true, then it would show the data. All right, so now come over here. So our actual data is being loaded for this section, and this section is the private function we created earlier in this tutorial, which is this one. Okay, now over here we need to wait. Okay, once the data has been loaded, which means this is true, then I will show the data. And how to do that? Well, now I'll first cut this function over here. Okay, now over here I need to define an observable function, and that's coming from Getx. That's called obx. This is purely coming from Getx. All right, now within obx we'll put whatever we need to put, because this function would be dynamic. Okay, now over here we'll do like this. Okay, so of course I'm missing this one. Okay, that means it takes a function, obx takes a function, so that's why you have this one over here. Now over here we'll do a check, if controller dot, now the value. So how do we access the value? This one over here. So we already have this one, loading. Okay, so we can just call loading. If controller dot loading is false, okay, we need to return something when it's false. Okay, so what do you want to return? We want to return a progress bar, so we would do circular progress bar indicator like that. Okay, that's it. Okay, else we'd return something different. We'd return this list, the one we have earlier. Remember, when you are within obx, you have to return something, otherwise you will get an error. So if it's false, it will show the progress bar, otherwise it will show the list. Okay, all right, now let's go ahead and see. Now, okay, it's loading over there. Okay, and 5 seconds has been done and it showed perfect. And now we need to take care of this progress bar. It's at the top corner. We don't want it like this. So first we'll wrap it around a container. So on Mac you do option enter and you will get this one on for Android Studio though. And for VS Code on Mac you do option dot. Anyway, we'll wrap it around a container now, and this container will give it width and height. Okay, so do width 100 and height 100. Okay, now let's load it one more time. Our data is already loaded, so we need to reload our whole app. Now it's bigger, but it's still there. Another reason is because it's not in the center, so we can wrap it around a center widget. Now it will put in the center. Let's see. Okay, now it's loading. Perfect. So data loading is working, and with this we have successfully simulated when data is being loaded from network. But of course in future, when you load the data from network, we'll have to remove this few things and we would be good to go. All right, yeah. So now there are a few other things that we can take care right now. These images, okay, all these images are not in our JSON files. So do remember, if you started the project from earlier part, the first part, you'll have the images over here, brand 1, 2, 3. So we'd be using those images. Okay, now we need to mention them over here. So what I would do here img, and over here I would do images brand 1.png. okay, so I'll copy paste this and put it over here, each of them. It is brand 2.png, and same over here. Okay, brand 3.png. okay, so this images is the image path over here. All right, perfect. So now we need to come over here and need to find this image. So I search for, I would do image, I think there's one called brand, this one, right? So this one, actually we can completely remove this, since we are able to access the info in our JSON file using this controller variable. So we'll access that one and access to list, and then we'll go to the index, the certain index, and then we'll reach for our img tag. Now in this case, we need to completely reload our app. Okay, loading, perfect. Okay, now our images are being dynamic, right? So everything is working as we expected, and other function works as well. Okay, perfect. Okay, so now next what we'll see how to select each of them and generate the bill and add this data. Okay, that's what we want to do. Well, now this part is pretty interesting. We need to be able to select this certain part. Okay, yeah. So now how to do that? Now let's go ahead and find this keyword, which is called select. So select, select. Okay, so this is the place where select. But remember, this is wrapped around a container. So this is the container, right? Yeah. And now first we need to be able to select it, tap on it. Okay, so I'll collapse this section. Now let's open it one more time. So this is our container, which is showing this gray background with the text. Now we want to be able to tap on it. So what we can do, we can wrap it around a widget. So, and the widget name is gesture detector, because gesture detector takes on tap event. Okay, so once we click on this, we want to trigger a response. For now, let's do a test, tapped. Okay, now let's reload everything, and we need to wait 5 seconds. Well, I think I can change it to just 1 second because we are done with the most important part anyway. So now if we click on this, it is tapped. If we click on this one, it's tapped. So it means we are able to tap on it. Okay, now once we tap on it, we need to be able to change the background color, as well as another thing we need to be able to do, to change the status. So once we tap on this, we'll set it to false, set it to true. Okay, yeah. So we need to be able to change the status, all right, and change the background. As soon as we click on it, we need to be able to change the background color and the status based on this. Okay, all right. So how do you do that? Now over here, do remember we can access the value. So how do we access? We could do controller dot list. Now we'll go to the certain index. Now here we have this status, this one, and now once it's been tapped, immediately we'll store a new value to it. We'll just simply do the opposite. So with this mark over here, we are doing the negation. Whatever is there, we are doing it. All right, and we can confirm it. We can do a print method over here. Okay, and we'll print the value. Remember, by default, all these values are false. Okay, so anyway, let's go ahead and load it. So this time we're loading it just after 1 second later. Done. Now all the values default is false. So now I tap on this, it becomes true. I tap on this, it becomes false again. The same over here, right? So it's working. Perfect. So now based on this, we want to change the background color of the selected area. Okay, so how to do that? Now do remember, selected area, the background color is coming from here, from the box decoration, as you can see. Now as we have access on this one, and this value we can change it dynamically, we can use this value over here, and based on that value, we'll be able to change the background color. Okay, yeah. So now here we'll check it. So if it's true, well, or say we'll do false. If it's false, then whatever color is there, we are showing it. Otherwise, we'll do another color. Remember, f color dot green. So once it's been selected, we'll show green. Okay, now let's go ahead and show it. Let's see. Okay, now over here. Well, it did get selected, as you can see, but the color is not being changed. Well, now the reason is here we could do one thing. Once being tapped, we can reload our list. Okay, reload our list dot list. Okay, and now list has a default function which is called refresh. We can call this one. Once you click on this, the new value is saved immediately over here with this line, and then we reload it. Once we reload, hopefully we'll be able to see the green background. Okay, let's do it. Yes, perfect. Okay, over here, so they're working independently right now, right? But now with the text color is a bit weird. We want to change the text color to white. Okay, once it's selected, so now over here we can do it. So this is the default status. If it's false, whatever the color, we keep it. Otherwise, we would do colors dot white. Okay, now let's go ahead and save it, and we can reload it. Okay, yeah. So you see, it changed to white color, background changes. Now we change the background to gray, it becomes gray as well. Okay, so perfect. Everything is working perfectly. All right. Okay, well, now the next thing we want to do, we want to be able to know how many has been selected. Okay, we want to save the selected these containers or items in a special list, and based on that we'll pay the bills later. Okay, well, I know a lot of you guys are waiting for the loading data from network, but actually we have already done pretty much all the basic work. Later on, all we need to do, build our API and call from here. Okay, and we should be good to go. But before we go ahead, now let's see how to save the selected variable or values in a new list. Okay, yeah, that's what we want to do. All right, well, to do that, over here, let's come to our data controller. As I said earlier, controllers is the thing that processes the data, right? Okay, perfect. So now over here we'll create a new method. Okay, but this time we'll also use the get, this keyword. Okay, and within get we'll call a variable which is called new list, and over here we'll do something. Okay, now do remember each time you click on them, the list over here, this one gets updated. So now we can access this list from here, okay, and then we can see how many values has been changed. Okay, those changed values will save in this new list. Okay, so this new list will have those new list, I mean based on the selection, okay, wherever you tapped based on that. Okay, so now let's go ahead. So first go ahead and access our list, and how to do that, we'll call list.map. When you do list.map, actually you can access all the values within this list. Okay, that's what you could do. Or before we do that, actually we could do a condition. Okay, just like this, you access all of them, but what's the point right now? Sorry, yeah, if you access all of them like this, say for example, you'd get the old values, not the new values. Okay, we want to get the values over here based on the tab. Remember, once we tap over here, we saw early wherever the tab was, the tab function. Let's see. Let's look for gesture detector. Gesture, yeah, I think we have quite a few gesture. Yeah, over here. Okay, so once we tap over here, the value is changed and saved in this variable, right? So based on that, we need to do things. So anyway, so come over here. So first we need to find how to look for the condition. Now list has a function which is called where. Okay, yeah, so over here we could do this one, where we can call it any parameter you want. We'll call it e, where e. Okay, where e has a certain value, so it'll take each one up from the list. Okay, and then we'll check the status. So now with this we could do e and status. So we are accessing like the first row, or you could understand it like this from here. We are accessing the first object, and then we are looking for the status key. Okay, that's what we are doing. So come over here. So we are accessing the first one once again, like this whole thing, and then we're looking for the status. Okay, now if it's true, we'll continue, otherwise it will just return false. Okay, we'll do nothing. Okay, so if it's true, then we call another function which is called map. Okay, all right, if it's true, whatever is there, save it, and save it to this variable called list. Okay, yeah, actually what it does is from the list it does a check, and if the check is true, then continue with this and turn it to a list. As I said earlier, in Flutter Dart, wherever you see map.map, you have to return list to list, otherwise you won't get your expected result. Okay, so now because if there is a true result for this, it will continue up to here, and the new value would be listed over here. Okay, if it's not, it will just return and wouldn't add anything to this thing. Okay, or not any, it wouldn't add anything to this property or the field. Some people call it field, some people call it property. Anyway, so now this will have our new list based on the condition of the status. Okay, all right, now once again, if you want to understand what is this thing where and map and the toolist, check out the link I said earlier. This is very important. Once again, here we are actually using arrow function. Okay, so as it saves the new information, we can access it from here and print the log for now. Okay, say for example, we could do a print over here. Okay, you do controller dot we'll do new list, this one, and we'll get the length of it. Okay, length. Okay, all right, so now let's go ahead and reload everything. Okay, it's loading. All right, loading is done. Now once I click on it, this length should be 1. Let's see what's happening. We get null, and I'm missing another important keyword over here. We are missing return. Okay, so now let's go ahead and try it one more time. Okay, now click on it, so it's true, 1, and click on this one, it'd be true. Now you click in, well, so this one once again, so the value is removed automatically because it's not true, right? Okay, so in this one we'll have the new value. Okay, now we can pass this new value. Once we click on this, we can pass it to somewhere, this new value, and we should be good to go. Now another thing, because once again a lot of people recently, they like to write in arrow function, so that's what I would do over here. I will just remove all of this and I would do arrow function over here, just one line. Okay, all right, now let's run it one more time, make sure everything is okay. All right, okay, perfect. It's working, it's working, it's working. All right, it's good. But if you go over here, it's wrong. I mean, it's 0 because nothing in the list, right? Okay, perfect. So far we are very good and happy with this performance and everything. Now we'll see how to build our backend and load data from network, and at the same time we'll also build our API. Okay, all right. So now so for building API and backend, we'd be using Laravel. So there's a link how to download Laravel and install it. You can check that one from that list. And once you're done with installing Laravel on your machine, follow along with me how to build the backend as well as the API. So to work with Laravel, hopefully you should have Laravel installed in your local machine or in your server, wherever you work with, but I suggest to work with server because you get the actual experience that how to build an API and how to access it from the outside world. Sometimes in local host, it's not exactly the same, but it would do the work though. Anyway, so here I have this Laravel application that I've just installed. So this is my API, this is the website that I would be building API and as well as the backend. All right, and to install the backend would be using this package. Okay, it's a very powerful package if you know it. If you try to use it, get used to it. It comes with a lot of work that you don't need to do. They have already done the work, like as you can see here. Anyway, so I'll go through it a little later, but first once you install your Laravel application and when you are done with that, come over here in this website and click on installation. Okay, and once again I'm going to install it in the server. So here I'm inside my Laravel application, if you want to know that what's going on. So this is my Laravel folder and there are some other sites over here. Anyway, so I'm going to access my domain, so which is Flutter bslmail.com, and here I have this Laravel, so I'm inside the Laravel project. Okay, I'll clear it, I'll do ls. Okay, over here I'll run this application. I'll run this command, actually this command, just copy it and paste it. Okay, yeah, and it's asking you as a root user or not, and you go ahead and say yes. Now it might take you a couple of minutes to get it done, so let's wait. So as it is installing, so let me walk you through some of the files. Oh, I guess it's too fast. Anyway, so I'm not going to walk you through. So next thing you need to do, go ahead and copy paste this one. All right, and it's done. And now it would ask you to install actual package. So this is where you go. And it's creating tables, and it also did some migration. Okay, and that's it. Now this website has a lot of information, how to use it, how to develop some functions in the backend, and the project structure itself. And I'll also put the link that personally I think a lot of people might encounter errors, so I put them in this link over here. and how to do some basic work. Anyway, so just check, don't forget to check out this one. And actually I'll be publishing this page quite often, as well as this one. So those two are for Laravel backend. It tells you how to do some of the things. Okay, so you should follow these two pages if you want to use this powerful backend. And some of the functions you still need to develop on your own, and it becomes much faster if you know that how this backend works. A lot of this guide is over here. Anyway, so we just done with this installation, and now we can go to our domain. Sorry, before we go to domain, like over here it might tell you that okay, so whatever and wherever you install, your username is admin and password is admin. So we'll go ahead to our domain over here, and the URL is in general admin. So it'll take you a page like this, and I'll do admin and admin one more time. Let's see. Yes, perfect, and asking me to save or not, so I'll save it. Now this is the default dashboard homepage, so you can, there are a lot of information here, you can go through them and close them. Okay, now there are two menus over here. One is dashboard, which shows you this one. The other one is over here, so who is the user and their roles and menu, things like that, and operation log. So a lot of the things here. But of course, these are the things that we are not going to use for now. Actually, what do we want to do? We want to create a list of users, and those users will have this information saved in the backend, and we want to read them from the backend. Okay, so first we'll go ahead and create this record in our backend. Okay, and then actually we'll be able to read them in our application. Of course, we also need to create API, but somehow you have to have this information in our backend, meaning that our database has to have this information, right? Okay, perfect. So now if you worked with Laravel, that you know Laravel works with more like eloquent model thing. So first we have to create a model. So when we say we are creating a model, that means that we are going to create a database table. So while now our database is over here, like so this is our database. So this is the database of Flutter, and it's a bit different than Laravel default installation because it also has this extra things that coming from the admin package. Anyway, so here we are going to create a new table for our database. Okay, all right. So to do that, first we need to run some command. Okay, so let's go ahead and create a model for our database table. So we do php artisan make model, and the name of the model. So name of the model, I would say bill info. Okay, so this is our model's name because this is where we'll store all this information. Okay, over here. Right, so we're going to make a model. Okay, now once you make the model, it should be in your project folder. So come to your project folder. So let me refresh it. Project folder over here. Let's see. Application, models, and bill info. So it's already there. It's created for you automatically, right? Okay, so the next thing what we want to do, we want to create a controller for this. Okay. So what we'll do, so let's come to our terminal line. So here we'll create a controller. So let's go ahead and do it. So we do php artisan. Now this controller would be a backend controller. So backend controllers are all over here within this admin and controllers folder. Okay, you need to know that. So now for this package, this is the command that you should use, admin make. Now your controller name, you do bill info controller. Okay, now this info controller will also look for the related model, and you need to tell the model name and path. So you do model. Now the model is in app folder. This is the app folder, and then models folder. So this is the models folder, and this is the model name. So you do bill info. Okay, so now it will create a controller for this model. Okay, yes, and actually it did. And after doing it, it told you that go ahead and add this thing somewhere here. Do remember, again, this is a backend controller, not for the front end. Okay, so I'll copy this thing and paste it to this file, and this file is actually, where is this? It says admin routes. So these are admin and this is our routes file. So go ahead and add it over here. So we did that. Perfect. Okay, now we'll save it. Okay, and it should create a controller for you over here. Okay, let me refresh this editor. It's a special editor that I use. It's very convenient, but it's in Chinese though, as you can see from here. So now let's see. So this is our controller. So it created a controller, and we'll be talking about this controller very soon. So now the controller is there. So the other thing we need to do, we need to go ahead and create a migration, a table actually. So we have the model for the database, but we still don't have the table, right? So what we'll do, we'll go ahead and create the actual table. So you do PHP artisan over here, make migration, I guess they call it, make migration, and we do create. And now over here, our model migration name should be bill infos. So as you know that in Laravel, if you have two capital letters, they become small capital letters, and between them there should be a space with underscore. Okay, and we'll call it tables. Okay, so it will create a migration table for us, and it did. Okay, so this is the table name. So now over here, let's see, I'll refresh it. So we'll go to the database migrations over here, and I believe this is our table. Yeah, this is our table, migration table. Okay, now it created this table, the blueprint, not exactly, it's in the database. In the database it's still not there. We need to run the command make migration. Anyway, so what do you want to store in the table? Definitely we want to store in the table a brand name, right? So it's integer type, so we do brand name. And what else we want? We want some, say, text, image, right? So there should be an image for our brand, I mean the logo or whatever. So we'll call it brand logo. And then we'll have this amount of money. So let's go ahead and see. So this amount of money, and this should be an integer. So do integer, and due. That's what I write, and I think we can give it a default value. So default value is 0 for it. Okay, and over here, actually for this one, we can also provide a default value, and default value is null. Okay, what else? Let's do over here, what else we could do? Some description. Okay, so that should be string, and we'll call it more. Okay, we'll call it brand more. Okay, or do info. I think that sounds better. Do info. Okay, and default, once again, null. Sorry for the noise though. And then what else we'll have? We'll have an ID. Okay, so ID we'll call it brand ID, and default, so 0. And what else we want? Let's see. We can also want a date. Okay, due date. I would use date over here. Let's see actually what is used. Okay, I think with date we are good actually. Date and due date. Okay, all right, and let's see. Okay, so that's it. So this is our migration table information. That's what we want in our database. So we'll save it, and now we'll go and run migration. Okay, so we'll do php artisan migrate. Let's see. Yes, it created this table. Now we would come over here in our database, and we'll refresh our database. We'll see there is a table called bill info tables. So this is our table. Okay, I'm curious though why it does have this table right next to it. It wasn't supposed to be there. Let's see, maybe once I run the migration. Yeah, I did actually tables, so I should have written here table, not tables. So it added this one as a default, but it doesn't matter though. Anyway, we're good now. So with this, now let's go ahead and see our backend. So this is our backend over here. Okay, now here the first thing we want to do, we want to show a menu where it would say bill info, the menu name. Okay, so now over here, if you come here, this section, so you'll see this menu category. So you have to actually create a menu from here. So now we'll call the menu's name bill info, and you can keep it root for now, it doesn't matter. If you keep it root, it will show right here. So you can change the order if you want, but for now we don't need that. And over here we can say info. All right, we can find an icon for this, and URI. Now what is this URI? This URI should be the URI in your routes. This one. Okay, so it's the resource URI for our route. So what we'll do, we'll go ahead and put a slash and URI name, and we'll give it all the permissions for now, and we'll submit it over here. So now this is the link. Okay, right, of course you can come over here and edit it if you want, but we don't need to. So we'll go back, and now we can refresh it, and we'll see this is right here. Now, the most powerful thing about this laravel-admin package is right here will happen. Okay, I'm sorry. The most powerful thing is not here yet. Now it's saying that couldn't found a table bill infos. It doesn't exist. So let's see over here. Let's see if we can change the name. Okay, I think we can do it over here. Infos. Let's submit it. And now see. Now let's refresh it. Yes, perfect. So this is the most powerful thing. So once you click on this one, it would show you a menu. Well, of course, nothing is there, but we want to see our rows of information over here in one by one row, right? That's what we want to see that. Okay, well, what we could do for this one, now we need to populate our controller with the data. Okay, now for this Laravel package, the backend has for any controller, backend has three main functions. One is grid function, and there is detail function, and there is form function. Now, well, of course, as you can see, it auto-generated some function for you. So it takes this bill info model. Do remember that we had this command over here. Because of this one, actually, it created a controller and inserted our bill info, this model, in the controller itself. As you can see, it's over here as well. Okay, anyway, so the grid shows the information from the database. Okay, that's what it does. Yeah, now we can go ahead and write some information over here. So it creates an object using this model, and of course the constructor is called grid. Why it calls grid? Because it wants to show the information in a grid column pattern, in a row. Okay, that's why it's called grid. Anyway, now this grid has a lot of properties. Okay, Now if you really want to know how this grid works, you can come over here in vendor directory, and you can find this one, anchor, and laravel-admin. Now come over here to source, and here the grid file. There is a lot of cool information that you can use. Okay, so one of the properties called column, so that's what we'll be using. Okay, all right, so grid column. Now the way it works, it takes the field from your database. Okay, so what is the first field? So the first field, ID in our database table, and the name we want to show in the front end, that we'd call ID, and the other one. So now here, actually, to be quick, I would just copy paste this one over here so that I know actually which is the information that I need to type in. You know, well, this is the ID we have, and then we have what's the other column name? So that's the brand name. So I'll put here brand name, and over here I'll do brand name. Okay, yeah, and what I can do, I can just copy paste this one to be quick. Now here it's a brand logo, so I'll do logo, and over here logo. Now let's put it again. Now over here we'll just do and we'll do here do. So these are the tags that you want to show, and these are the column name once again. And over here we do grid column. Now do info, so do info, and do info, and grid once again, and brand ID, and grid, we do column date, and well, I think that should be due date, and oops, I made a mistake, due date, and yeah, due date. Anyway, so now let's remove this one. Now let's save it. Now with this, let's see, come to our backend, and if we see any new information over here or not. Perfect. So these are the things that we just wrote down there, and that's what we see. Isn't it amazing? So now, for example, say you have a record in your table. So this is your table. The table is, so let me refresh it. So bill info, this is the table. Now here actually we can insert insert some information. Okay, so let's go ahead and do insert. So brand name, say tech power, and brand logo. Well, I want to put a logo of the image, so here right now random text, so it should be path of the image, and say 99. Do info as you must pay before blah blah blah. Brand ID, it could be anything, and due date, so this one, and created, modified, like that. So now we'll do go. So it populated this information, and now let's come over here, our backend. Perfect. You see, so you don't need to write a single code of CSS or HTML to show this info. All you did is you just modified your controller, and this is how you purely stick to Laravel and PHP, which improves your skill, and which personally I like very much. So with this backend, you really don't need to write any information. Okay, so once you know how does the menu binding works, how to bind menu, and how to create
controllers, it becomes very powerful. Okay, so anyway, so now we are done with this, so we can show information, but definitely that's not how we want. Okay, so first we'll learn how to build an API for GET request and POST request. Okay, so definitely first we'll do POST request. Within POST request, we'll have information from our app. We'll click on the submit button, and then we'll post it in the database. Okay, and at the same time, if we do get request API, we can pull out all the information from our database and show it. Okay, so now here's one thing. So if you want to build an API in Laravel, it doesn't matter what package you use for the backend, the idea is same. So all you need to do, you need to come to this route folder over here, and here you will find something called API. Okay, so over here you need to create your API. Okay, now, well, this API needs a controller. Okay, yeah, so first we need to build a controller. So here we'll create a controller. Remember, with this we create a controller for the backend. Now we can create another controller for the front end API. Okay, so here we'll call PHP artisan make controller bill info controller. So remember, this would be in a different folder over here, I guess somewhere in this. Let's see, it would be here within your HTTP folder. Okay, right now we just have this one. Anyway, so let's go ahead and create one. So I'll refresh over here, and hopefully I'll be able to see our new created controller, which is this one. Of course, this empty. So we'll be using this controller for our API request between the model and the front end. So this is again once again MVC pattern. So C is the controller, M is the model, V is the view. So this is the controller. This would work as a bridge between model and the view. Anyway, so well, I'll close this file. We don't need that anymore. So now over here. Okay, now over here we need to create a route for our GET request. So we do route GET, and now we of course need to have an endpoint for our route. So endpoint, we'll call it say bill info, and now it should refer to a controller. Okay, so what's our controller name? Our controller name is bill info controller. And then this endpoint should refer the controller's method. So we can call it index for now, because using index we'll get all the information from our database for certain requests. Okay, anyway, let's go ahead and save it. So now what we'll do, we'll come to this controller, which is this one over here. So remember, this is for the backend. We don't need it now. We'll use it later. Anyway, so now here we'll define our method. So we'll call public function index. Okay, all right, sorry. So now index will pull out all the information from the database and return it as JSON. Okay, that's what we want. Okay, now here we'll create a variable. We'll call it info, and info would first find a model. So what is our model? So this is our model. Do remember, this model has to do with our database table bill info, right? Anyway, so here we'll call bill info, and then we'll do, say, what do we do? We go to get or first. All right, yeah, like that. And then what we'll do, we can return it as JSON. Okay, so how to return it as JSON? We do return JSON decode and info. Okay, yeah. And now of course over here you need to import your model, this model over here. So let's use use app models, the model name. Okay, now we're good with this. Okay, so now what you could do, we can open a new tab and we'll do flutter.bslme.api.billing for this one, and definitely we get this error, and the reason is because with new Flutter, sorry, new Laravel update, you must mention your path as well. Okay, yeah, so if you don't mention this path, you'll get this error. Now let's go ahead and save it, and after saving it, so let's refresh it. Perfect, our API is already working. Okay, it's working amazingly. All right, yeah, so it means that our JSON data returning correctly. So from our file, let's see, where is our controller? Controller is over here, so this one. So for now it's returning only the first one. Of course we want to create more records, and we'll see how it works. Anyway, so at the same time we also want to create a post request. Okay, post request. So we'd do public function submit info. Okay, like that. And over here, because this is a post request, so it'll have a request object. Laravel will know it automatically. Okay, whatever the request comes in, we'll grab that. Okay, and from each of the so here we grab it in the request variable, and then we can access it over here, like using the field name. Okay, so we could do, but anyway, so it's not there yet, so we need to create them. Okay, so we need to grab those fields that's coming from our request, post request. So we do post, and what is the information that we want to send actually? Well, definitely we are going to send from our outside request brand name, say brand name, that's what we want. Okay, and what else we want? Well, now here this should correlate to your brand name in the field of your database. So you do brand name. Okay, like this. Before we go ahead, actually we should create an instance for this one from our model. So you do new build info, like this one. Okay, all right, so we have this instance of info. Now whatever comes from the request, so we call it brand name, and we save it to the brand name in this model field. Okay, all right, we could do, say, brand ID. So you do request post brand ID, and what else we could do, say okay, let's go ahead and check our database, it would help us more. So build info, so it's over here, and do brand, well, we can't post a brand logo though, for now we wouldn't do that. We do brand do brand, so let's go ahead and do the do, that's info. So do request post do, all right, and now we also have do info, I guess. So request post do info. What else we can post? Let's see, here come to our database, and well, for now we just want to post this for, okay, well, do date. Well, we can do that though, we'll do it as a string for now, but then we need to change the type over here. Okay, so we'll skip due date because we just want to see how things work, not too much detail. And once you have this one, do info over here, you want to save it to the database. Okay, so instead of user we do info. So what it does here, it takes this information over here one by one, and then it tries to save it. Once the save is successful, then it will return success, otherwise it will return fail. Okay, that's all it does, and it will also have a certain code that we can use in the front end if we want. So if you know how Laravel works and saves information, So API is just same as doing a post request. Okay, nothing fancy. But for the beginners, it might look scary though. Anyway, so we save it as a JSON info. When you do a GET request, we decode them. Anyway, so let's save it over here. Now come to our, let's see, this is submit info. So come to our API. So here we do post, and here we'd call it submit info. Now here, what we'll do, we'll just copy paste this one and post over here. Oops, looks like it didn't copy this part. So we'll do this one, and then we'll do submit info. The submit info is same as this one. Same as this one over here, submit info. Alright, okay. Now, how to verify this thing that our post request is going to work or not? Actually, there's a pretty easy way to verify this one. So we'll use a tool called Postman. Okay, from Postman we can verify that whether we can successfully submit data into the database or not. Okay, so if you know how Postman works, you should install Postman in your Mac or Windows. It's free to use. Anyway, so here we'll create a new post request. So we'll call it, so our website's name is flutter.bslmenu.com and API. And then the endpoint. What is our endpoint? Endpoint name is submit info. Once again, so this is the endpoint. Okay, so once you call this endpoint, it will call the related functions within it and do whatever it needs to do. Now, anyway, let's come back to our endpoint over here. Okay, and what can we do? So now let's see. We want to see the body first. Okay, and over here, make sure so this is the correct one. So the JSON type, and headers should be like this: content type and application JSON. Okay, so because we are sending JSON information, so whatever comes in key pair values, that's as a JSON information. Then you should come to the body, and in the body you write your JSON information. Well, I already did a bit of work before, so anyway, so the brand name, I can just modify it. I'll call it tech gen. Well, of course we don't need email, so what are the fields we need over here? We can see it from here, so that this for information we are posting, right? Yeah, so we do say brand ID. Now brand ID is an integer, so we can just randomly type anything, and also status. Well, for now, okay, let's keep the status there, and we would call here, say, do info, and this is called do. So that's it. But now I think we're missing one very important thing: status. We saw early in our application that we need a status to select and work on this one. So unfortunately I missed it. So I'll add a new column from the database directly, and I'll put it right after do, and over here I'll call it status as int type. So I do maybe tiny int is okay, and default value as defined 0. Okay, so now if we come over here, we have the status. Okay, so for the post request we can also submit, let's see, now if we come to this one over here, now our status is okay. Now we'll submit status 0. That means we didn't pay the bill. Okay, so make sure this name's same as this one over here. One more thing though, like we also need to post status now. Request post status, whatever the value comes in. So these are the words that will carry the value from our post request, and they will save them in the database over here. Anyway, so now let's go ahead and see that if it works or not. Okay, all right. Now, well, looks like we have an error. So creating object from empty value. So this is 21, line 21. So bill info controller. Go to line 21. Okay. Here we do have a mistake, but here it says that empty value. Okay, now let me check our postman over here. Okay, let's try it one more time. Now, once again, we have an error on line 21. So this is the line that status. Make sure the spelling is correct. So put it there. I'll save it. Okay. Now we have a new error, doesn't have a default value. So we have logo and other things. So it wants a default value. So what we could do, we could go ahead over here. Let's see some of the things like due info, logo, they don't have default value. So especially because this one we are not passing. So that's why it's not submitting. So we can change that. So due info default value, what's it due info? Let me check it one more time though. Bill info's brand logo, sorry. So this is the brand logo over here. Let's change it to null and timestamp, date default, current timestamp. Okay, so the invalid default value. Okay, let's see, maybe we can change it to date time or timestamp. Let's go ahead and save it, and it worked anyway. So now hopefully it should work though. So let's submit it one more time and see. Yes, success. Now this information we just sent it to a database and we did it through a post request. Okay, now make sure that our database has this information. Perfect. As you can see, so this is the new data that we submitted from. Okay, yeah, so that's so cool, right? Yeah, so let's go ahead and create one more record. We'd say Airtel and say brand ID whatever, and 00 pay before 13th August, like that. Okay, let's go ahead and save it. Okay, now let's refresh our database. Perfect. So this is the new one that we just created. Okay, well, next we'll see how to pull in this information from our application over here and show it to the our UI over here. Okay, so things are getting more and more excited. Anyway, so now to do that, we need to come to our file over here. So here we need to use HTTP. So what I'll do, I'll go ahead and install HTTP. So that's the package that we need to use. So here I'll just go ahead and install HTTP. Okay, well, after that, what we do, we'll come over here. So we need to modify this file over here. So far we are reading data from JSON file. Now is the most interesting part. We want to read the data from our API, the API we created over here. Okay, so this is the thing. So this is our get API, but of course now we are just getting the first record. Now it's just showing the first record, but we can get all the records. So with get, we'll be able to retrieve all the records from the database. We'll save it. Now we'll make sure that it works on the browser as well. So these are all the records that we created earlier, as you can see from here. Okay, so that means our get request is working pretty well. Anyway, so now we'll come to our Flutter file over here. Definitely we need to first create a variable for our endpoint. So we'll call var API URL, and our endpoint is index. So well, this is the endpoint, or actually in our case this one. Sorry, so I need to change it to, I guess, let's see, bill info. Okay, so what we'll do, we'll come over here, so we'll change it to bill info. And over here actually we can declare our base URL. So you do string base URL. Okay, and what is the URL in our case? That is http flutter.bslmail.com. And we also have API, the slash, so you need to do it. So if you want to access API, you must have API in Laravel anyway. And after that, we can create our use our HTTP object that we installed early, and it has a property called response. Okay, response. So let's see. I think we need to import it and import it as HTTP. Then you have this one. So now you have access to it. Response, and then we create a variable based on that one, and then we call http.get. Okay. All right. Now it takes a parameter, or actually a method. So we'd call URI.parse. Okay. Now over here you need to send your base URL plus your API URL. So once again, API URL is the endpoint. Okay, then you should be good to go. Now you need to put semicolon over here, and I think here it's saying it's a feature type, so it can't be accessed from using like response. So what you need to do, put here a wait. Okay, and the error should be gone. Let's see. I think we don't need this one. We're pretty good to go. All right. So now once we call this function, so it will first access this one, and then try to retrieve this information. Try to retrieve information using this HTTP get method and put it in response. Okay. Now our response object will hold our information. Okay. All right. So for now, actually, we don't need this thing anyway. So let's see. So this time we'll use a try clause once again. Okay. Yeah. So try catch e, and then we first print e if we have an error, and then we also print again API request failed. Okay. All right. Now over here. So now HTTP, if it successfully retrieves data, it sends a signal or a status code, so we can access the status code. We do if response.status code equal 200. So that means it was able to successfully communicate with the server and retrieve data. Okay, yeah. So if it did, then we would do things over here. Okay, otherwise we'll just say maybe it failed. Okay, failed. So we'd say print. We do something went wrong. Okay, all right. Anyway, so now here we don't need this one anymore, so we'll just do a tag, comment it out. Okay, perfect. Of course, it'll now here show you an error because you need to return something. Okay, yeah. So for now, so we'll do return. What can we return? Return null. Let's see. No, you can't return null, you can return empty. Yeah, for now we'll just do this one, that's all. And over here, let's see, we also need to return something. Return empty array, nothing is there. But anyway, so now what it will do, we'll go ahead and see whether it works or not. Okay, if it works, so here we should have a message worked. Okay, all right, so let's go ahead and check it. So now let's see over here. So here it says that something went wrong. So this one, it means that the status code was not successful. Well, anyways, after putting HTTP, it worked. So as you can see, if we put a log over here, it says that yes, it worked. So that means that it successfully worked with this server and got info back. So that's why we get 200. Okay, now over here, instead of doing print worked, what we could do, we could do, for example, we could do print and await and JSON.decode. We can decode the information, whatever is in the response. So in general, it's within the response.body property. So over here, okay, so that's what we'll do, and go ahead and print it. Okay, yes, perfect. Wonderful, amazing. So our API is working, is getting this data from the server, and now we are able to successfully print them, right? Okay, so that's working, that's amazing, right? So now we need to put this data in a list. Okay, remember earlier we were putting data in a list, right? So we need to do the same thing. So what we would do, we'll go ahead and call list, and we would do dynamic. We would call list, and just copy paste this one. Okay, yeah, so now it should work, and then we don't need this one. So now we can print the list. Okay, go ahead and do it. Yes, perfect. So the data is returning from the list, so we can print the list. Now over here, instead of returning this empty array, we can return this one, things like this. Okay, all right, so now let's go ahead and do it. So we do list dot map, that's what we saw early. So we'll map all the data and turn it to a list. Okay, yeah, once again, if you have a map, you go through them one by one, so it's not really like a list anymore. So you force it to be a list once you write like this. Okay, and this is what you want to return. Okay, so this is what you want to return. Right, now let's go ahead and save it, run the class, and let's see. Now here it did say that null is not a subtype of string. So let's see where we have this error over here. So now let's first come over here. So this is over here. So img. So of course it can't find any img. So for now, because we don't have img, so we'll skip it. So we'll just put whatever is in our images folder. So we'll do images brand1.png. Now let's go ahead and run it. Okay, now we have another error. Let's see how to fix them. Now over here, so it's a brand name. So now why we have this error over here? Now we have this error because from here we're returning brand name, but we are saying brand. Of course, in our JSON we had this brand, but now we are returning brand name. So all we need to do, we need to go ahead and change it to brand name. All right, let's go ahead. And of course we'll have more errors, so we'll fix them one by one. So now the next one over here, Well, more info. So what do we have here for more info? We do have do info, right? So we'll change it to do info. Let's see, run it and check one by one. Well, this is another way of debugging though. Now let's see the other one. So int is not subtract of string. So here it's I guess now what do returns? Do returns over here as an int, right? But now here we are saying that this is a string, so that's why it's causing error over here. So the one way to get rid of this thing, maybe we could do here, say this one, wrap it around this brackets and put over here, I guess, this $sign. Let's see, we still have an error. So our data is coming as int, but we are trying to convert it to string, so that's why the error is happening. Now of course it says that it doesn't understand this one. Let's see if we can get rid of using this single quote instead of double quote. Let's see if it runs or not. Yes, it did work. It did do some of the work, but of course at the same time we have this error over here, as you can see. So, but as you see, this information, ID and blah blah blah, Airtel, these are all coming from our database. That's what we had in our database. So let's go ahead and confirm and we'll take care of this issue. So our database, we have this Tech Power, Tech Gen, and Airtel. We also have this do info over here. So now our app has the same thing, Tech Power, Tech Gen, Airtel, and do info, due in 3 days. Let's see, I think we can also change this one. This is the static, and oh yeah, this is here, this one, and this one, right? Okay, so anyway, now of course we do have another problem over here, like this one. We need to fix. Okay, let's go ahead and fix this one first. Well, to fix this error, actually we need to declare a new file which we'd call a model. So for now our project doesn't have any model. In actually good projects there should be model. What it does is more like data converting between JSON and string, like that. So once you get data from server as JSON, you want to convert it to string. So model helps you to do that. So we'll go ahead and create a model. Anyway, so we'll create a new folder and we'll call it models. Okay, and within it over here we'll create a file. We'll call it data model.dart. Sorry, data model.dart. Okay. All right, so that's what we would do. Now here we'll create a class. Class name is data model, and now it will have some field. So these are the field that we want to use in our data model. So these are the field over here, ID, tech power, things like that. Of course, this ID is the database ID, record ID. We don't want this. We want the other ones. So how do you work around this? So let's go ahead and declare a string variable called brand name. So I'll call it brand name. And let's see, brand logo. Well, actually we don't need a brand logo for now. Actually we might need it. So let's go ahead and do brand logo. What else? We have status. The status is an int, so we'll call it status. I think it should be small letter. Yeah. And what else? Do info is a string, right? So that's what we need. And what else? Due date. Okay, for now we don't need due date. And another one, I think this due, which is int. So we'd go ahead and declare due. Okay, now we need to initialize in the constructor, so we'd call data model, and what we do this dot brand logo, this dot brand name, this dot status, this dot do, this dot do info, and we are good. All right, okay. Now once you get the data from the server, we need to convert a string. We'll use something called factory, and that's a special keyword in Dart, and we'll create a method for our data model. We'll call it from JSON. You can call it anything you want, and it'll take a parameter. Sorry. Once again, sorry. Now the parameter is a map type. What is map and list? Once again, check out the link below in the video description. It would really help you. String, and here's type is dynamic. So once again, the key is the string type, and the value is dynamic because the value could be anything. Okay, all right, and so this is the parameter type, and the parameter name is JSON. You can call it anything you want. All right, and over here we'll return a constructor data model, because this is an arrow function, so you can directly return this constructor over here. You need to put semicolon. Anyway, let's see, this is data model, so this is a method that would be calling, and it would return a constructor, and this constructor would do a special thing. What it do, it would convert the data to the corresponding key value pair name, the one we use in our application, and at the same time it can also convert from int to string, string to int, boolean to int, things like that. Okay, anyway, so now let's go ahead. So over here, so we have this one, so we have this brand name. So brand name is the property that's our model has, and what are we getting from database? Actually, also from database we are also getting the same name. You see in the database it's saved as brand name, so we put it there. And what else we could do? We could do brand logo, JSON, and we do status. Let's see. Status. And what else we need? Let's see. We need do info and int. Okay. All right. So let's do. And now do info. Okay. Now let's see. We still have error. Wow. From JSON. Let's see if we add this required keyword, if this solves our error or not. Okay, it might help us, but we need to introduce a curly braces. Yeah, that's what we need to do. And let's see. So with this we can just copy paste for each of them. We can put this one over here, and this one over here, and over here. Now the error should be gone. So now we have created a model. So this is a class, this is the constructor, and this is the other constructor. Okay, Well, now the constructor is working as an arrow function over here. Okay, instead of doing arrow function, if you don't know what it does, you could also do like this, cut it, and you could do return. Okay, it's the same thing. Okay, if you don't understand what is arrow function, anyway, so it'll create an object. Now it's a beautiful thing. Of course, we'll call this one. It'll create an object. At the same time, this information is coming from server, which we'll do very soon. And for server, those database field, those info, it'll save over here. Okay, yeah. Now we can solve some of the problems that we were having. So now here, okay, so JSON over here, like do is an what do we get when we get information from our server? So as you see, do is int, right? But now our home page doesn't take int, it takes string. So we can do a bit of change in the model itself. So we can convert it to string. So we can do to string. All right. But now, of course, it'll be cranky. Why? Because here it says it is integer. So we can change it to string. All right. And the error is gone. And what else? Let's see. Now the status. Okay. Now once it comes from the server, the status is, let's see. I think the status in our server is let's see, the property. So it's a tiny int. Okay, so let's see. Okay, for now, no need to worry about this status thing. I think we should be good to go. All right, yeah. So now with this model is done. So all it does is it creates an object, and during creating object, it does a lot of other things which this constructor can't do. So that's why this kind of constructor is very important, and it comes with a keyword called factory. Okay, you can do a lot of other things here. Even you can do a lot of conversion and then return the data. So that's the beautiful thing about it. Okay, now what we could do, we can come over here. We don't need this section anymore. So we can just call controller dot in list. We do index. Now of course we need to do like this. Instead of doing like do, we cannot do it anymore. We have to do the do. Okay. But before we go ahead and do like this, we have to take care of some other tiny issues. Now here, instead of returning dynamic, we can return our data model. Okay, as we know, our data is like this. So instead of dynamic, we know that this is our key and this is our value. So we know everything about it. So instead of doing dynamic, we can return data model. Okay, of course you need to data model. Let's see, it's asking you to create a class though, but we're supposed to be access it directly. It's not recognizing. Let's see if we can import it from here. Import package. So we can say data model. No, it doesn't recognize. So package. So Flutter app payment. Let's see this one. Okay, well, I guess it's not working because the model should be in the lib folder. Let me see if I can move it or not. It should work. Yes. Okay, now within service folder, you come over here. Yeah, the error is gone. The path is correct. Yeah, so it's working. So I created it outside mistakenly, but anyway, it should be within the folder. Okay, now over here, now it's being cranky because you can't really return like this anymore, because here you saying that you want to return a data model, but here you are really not returning a data model. So what we could do over here, we can call the model function that we created just now. We could call data model from JSON, this one. Okay, all right, and it takes the parameter e. Okay, yeah, so now the error should be gone. Let's see. Okay, now instead of returning null over here, we can return empty data model. Okay, and we could do the same over here if things go wrong. Okay, all right, anyway, so now over here actually we're good. Now let's see, but I think it will cause other issues over here. Now over here it can cause some issues though, because of the list type. And now over here we also need to change it. Why? Because here we are returning data model type. So the data it returns is a data model type object. So over here we need to change it. So instead of var, we can call it rx list data model. And over here we can do the same, data model. Okay, and let's see, and it's asking you to import this, and we should be good to go. And over here now there is this problem. That's because here you see it says that this operator is not defined for data model. Okay, well, because we just created our data model over here, and once you create data model, the objects and its properties, they have to be accessed using dot. Okay, yeah. But now there's another problem. This closure, it only takes true or false, but now status is of type int. Okay, which we saw early. So status is of type int. So that's why it's causing the problem, but we can check on it. All right, how do you check it? If it's equals 0, then we'll return false. So 0 is equivalent to our false. Okay, otherwise we'll return it to true. Okay, now this error should be gone and we are good to go. Now if you come over here, there are some other problems. Well, definitely the first problem is here, as I said, that now our list contains data model or objects, so you need to access them using like status, dot status, instead of doing the other way. But now here, when it was Boolean, it was easy for us to save the opposite information once we click on tab button. But now, because it's not Boolean anymore, so we can't really do it like this. But so we could do a little bit different way. So I'll cut it and we'll check if is equals 0. If it's equals 0, then equal status equal 1. So if its current value is 0, equivalent to 0, then we save 1 inside it. Okay, else if, so let's paste it, else if it's 1, then we save here 0. Okay, so this should solve the problem. And once again, here instead of this we do status. All right, and we should be good to go. Now there are a few other problems once again over here. So now here, let's do it dot status, and we'll check the current condition. Well, if it's 0, then we'll use whatever the color. So 0 is equivalent to false, as we learned early. And over here we could do the same thing. Okay, status equal 0. If it's 0, then whatever color is there, we'll use that. Otherwise we'll use white color for the text color, and this was for text background. I think we have a few other issues that we need to take care. So here we need to use dot brand name, because list contains objects properties or methods should be accessed using dot. And the other one over here, all right, so do info. All right, so but with this all the error should be gone. Now let's go ahead and run our app. Let's see what happens. Okay, now here we have this error. It says that null is not a subtype of string. Now that could be something, once again, has to do with our data model. So now here in our data model right now, brand logo is null. Well, it should be an image path. Okay, well, we'll go ahead and see our backend though. So let's take a look at our backend, and our backend is actually over here. So this is the backend. So here we don't have the image path or anything like that. Let's see. Oh yeah, we do have, but it's just a random text. Okay, and our backend is also missing another information that's called status. It's not there. So what you could do, we can come over here and we can update our status column in the database. And so this status would be responsible for showing whether we paid the bill or not. Let's refresh it, and the status is here. It's all 0, which is same as in our database. Anyway, but logo, while for some it's null, for some it's not null. Okay, like for the first one it's not null, but a lot of the rest two are null. So we need to do a check in our model. Okay, so that's why it's showing this error regarding this one. So our model is over here, and over here we can do a check. If it's null, okay, then what we would do, we'll put random text, otherwise random, well, otherwise what do you do, otherwise brand logo, whatever it is there, we'll put it there. Okay, yeah, so if it's null, then we'll put this, otherwise whatever the value is there, the value is there. Okay, all right, now let's go ahead and save it and see if we have error this time or not. Okay, perfect. So this time it load the data from the database and everything else apart from this picture. We'll take care of the picture very soon, don't worry. And these are the information that came from the database. Perfect. Well, from the server, if you don't have any image path, you can set up a default one for your application. So it will use a default image. Well, it could be, the path could be from your local folder, or it could be from actually anywhere. Even in the network you can have a default path, but anyway, so I'm getting this one from my JSON file. If there are no image found here, it will use the default image. Okay, hopefully it makes sense. Okay, now let's click on this and see the result. Yes, it changes. You click on this, it changes as well. Click on this, it changes. So this is the 3 information that has been saved. Now it will show you that 2 information has been saved. Okay, yes. Well, now this part is pretty interesting, because this time we want to actually load the image from our database. Okay, because right now, first thing, we don't have any image in database, and second, our backend doesn't really support this one. So that's what we'll be doing. To do that, we need to come to our backend code. So backend code is over here. All right, and here's the thing, to load the backend in the image in the backend, we like, okay, before I go ahead and show you, you see here it says edit. Actually, if we can edit, we'd be able to load image over here, but right now we can't edit them. So we need to find a way to edit them. So what do we do? We'll just copy this one over here, and I told you early that controller has this 3 method, which is grid. So this grid, and then we have this detail, and we have this form. So form is responsible for creating new form and submit it to the database. So once you create a new form, you submit it, you'll see over here. So this is more like a post request. So, or once you click a button over here, you'd be able to click create the new form. But if you click here, there's nothing right now. Okay, so this form method is not showing anything. Well, to be quick, what I will do, I'll go ahead and copy this part and put it over here. And now instead of form, instead of grid, I'll call them form. Okay, so let me change them. Okay, but of course we don't want to submit an ID. ID is auto increment, which generated automatically, but this one is text. If you have string format in your database, then on the controller for laravel-admin panel, it should be text. Okay, and over here for number, it should be, for integer, it should be number. So if your database has integer, over here it should be number. Okay, for date we use simply date. Okay, now do info, that should be text as well. And now how about this one? Actually here within this one we want to save an image path. At the same time we want to be able to upload an image. So here we'll call image property from this form object. Okay, now we'll save it and come over here to our backend. Let's refresh it, and of course it has some of this error. Now how to fix this error? It is saying that file configuration blah blah blah. So we need to configure our file, this config.file systems, for image uploading. Okay, yeah, so as you see, it did it automatically for you. We can upload an image, and this image would be corresponding to this one over here. Okay, this brand logo. Anyway, so now we have this error. So how to fix it? So earlier I told you over here, you can come over here, actually find this link, click on this, and it has, I already wrote out here some of these errors that you might encounter. So if you have the disk admin not configured error when you upload image, so you can just copy this section and find config file system. So find config over here and file system, this one, and hopefully we need to put it right here. So this is for uploading our images. All right, okay. Okay, so let's save it, and now let's go ahead and refresh it. Okay, now it's saying that impossible to create a directory. So it's asking you to go ahead and create a directory under public uploads under public folder. Create one uploads folder, because here we already said that there is a uploads folder and it's under public folder, but it couldn't create it due to permission issues. So what you could do, if you have FTP, you could go ahead and create it. Okay, so now here find our public folder. So this is our public folder. So over here we'll create a folder, and we'll create a folder, and we'll call it uploads. Okay, now public folder has been created. Now come over here and let's refresh it one more time, try to create a new one. Okay, perfect. Now this time we want to create something, say for example a new column. We'll call it tech gen power. Okay, and we want to upload an image. Okay, well, to upload the image, what we could do, so I'll upload the images from here. First one I'll upload as this one. Okay, CanGen, you should have it in your project folder as well, and say 1230 due info must pay now, brand ID, whatever you want, input date, so this one, due date, status is 0, which means it didn't submit. And now let's see, let's try to submit it. Okay, now it tells you that actually you should have another folder which is called images. Now where is this coming from? Actually, let's see, if you come to this file admin php over here, you'll see that for admin panel it wants you to have a folder named images. Okay, and over here it stores images, whatever image you upload from your backend, but we don't have this one. So what we'll do, inside it we'll create another folder and we'll call it images. Okay, sorry, it should be inside this. Okay, perfect. Okay, now we'll come here, we'll select the image one more time, and everything else stays the same. Let's submit it. Now here it says that permission denied. Okay, so looks like we need to create a permission. Okay, so now over here what I will do, I'll do a permission of 777 just for this folder, and let's see, try it one more time, and here, yes, so as you see image path is here. Okay, and the status is 0, so we can create another 3, and let's see, so would call it, say, what power we could say, let's see our image, so sorry, so we can call it sun power company. Okay, and we'll upload an image, and we'll upload the second image, or maybe we can say total power, it doesn't matter, and do say 567, do info pay before August, like that, and brand ID 1234, it doesn't matter, due date is this, and status is 0. Submit it. Perfect. So this is the second one. So you see this is a powerful backend. You don't need to write a lot of code for the backend side. And over here we'll upload the last one, and we'll call it Airtel. Okay, and let's see, and over here we would say 7850, or like that, and here you can pay any time, brand ID 7999, anything is okay, and say 28, status 0. Perfect. Okay, now with this we are able to see the images, right? Image path over there, and as well as this, and let's see if we select this one whether we'd be able to delete this or not. Okay, perfect. So it's automated there, so we don't need this thing anymore. We just want to show this 3, the latest 3. Okay, yeah, perfect. So we have this 3. Now we are happy with this. Okay, so now we would come back to our front-end code, Flutter, over here, and let's see our simulator. Now let's make sure everything is running correctly so far. Okay, now this is the time to change the images. Okay, yeah, so where are the images? So the images are over here in our my homepage file. Okay, and over here I think we have used an image which is called brand1. So over here we want to change the images. Okay, right. So how to change the images? So now the images over here, it saved this just path or directory that's in our from our FTP. We can see that just this part, but not for this whole section. Okay, so we need to manually write this thing. At least we have to write flutter.bslmail uploads, and rest of the things would be taken from here. Okay, if you refresh, you would see the images are there though. All right. Okay, so now let's go ahead and change our code. Well, for now, what we would do, we'll just type here, say http flutter.bslmail.com. Now over here we'll put this part of information, so which is string. Okay, but of course we can't access it like this. How do you access it? So you do brand logo like that. So brand logo is the property in our data model, as you saw earlier. Do you have brand logo? Yes, we do have brand logo, this one. Okay, yeah, so we have this one. So now let's go ahead and run. So after running this, we get this error, and this error over here, as well as we don't see the images. Now from the last image we see that it should be com/, so we are missing a slash over here, and it should be yu. I think I missed that one, as well as also I need to put uploads like that. Okay, perfect. Okay, and we still have an error, uploads images. Let's see, this is brand 2. So what we could do, we can just copy this one, uploads. Let's see whether it works or not. No, we still get an error, unable to load this asset. So let's put it there. So it looks like we're able to access from the browser, not from this file over here. Well, okay, now I do remember why. So what I need to do, instead of asset image, I think we need to do network image, because it's not anymore from local assets, so it's loading from network. This could be another issue. Let's go ahead and run it. Yes, this time problem solved. Perfect. It worked so far so well, and you guys have worked so hard to follow along with me so far. Okay, so everything is coming from backend, so that's what we just uploaded from the database. Okay, now here, yes, selection works. This is the info from database. And of course, one more thing, we need to change this ID. Okay, this ID is static. This is not the ID we inputted in our backend. If you come to the backend, you'll see the IDs are different, right? Okay, so this ID is still static, so let's search for ID, or we could search for ID like this. Okay, over here, what do we do controller dot list index dot brand ID. Let's see, brand ID. Do you have an column called brand ID? Actually, we don't have one yet. So what we can do, we can just create one here. We'll call it string brand ID, and over here anywhere we can pass it. So we'll pass it here. We'll do required this dot brand ID, and the same over here. We need to increase one more, so we do brand ID JSON brand ID. Okay, yeah, let's see, because we have brand ID over here. So now let's go ahead and save it, run it. let's see. Int is not subscribe of string, so brand ID is actually integer, so sorry, it should be int, and I guess everything else should be fine, but over here we need to convert it to string. Okay, all right, so now let's go ahead and run it. Yes, perfect. So these are different IDs, the company ID, but of course we can tag at string over here. Okay, like this. I think this would look much better with this, and I think it's missing plus. Perfect. That's amazing. So now, so far so good. Well, a few other things though, like if you come to our backend and let's see, if you try to edit, actually you can edit them. So over here, I think I have a spelling error. Let's see, instead of August, it should be August. So now here, August. So let's submit it. Okay, changed over here. Now let's reload our app, and this error should be gone because we are loading all the data. Perfect. So this is a powerful backend that you should get used to it, and follow my website over here, these two sections. Updating them every day, actually almost every day for the last few days, and you can always go to their official website if you have problem. Anyway, so now so far we're good with this. So next we'll see how to set up our PayPal account with Braintree, and then we'll do the actual payment in next section of this tutorial.